what happens now that the program, all the funds have been earmarked?
Well, Kelly, thank you for the opportunity to join you on behalf of community banks, not only in Texas, but around the country. Obviously, as your guests have stated, earmarks did run out as of today, and we're hopeful that Congress will step up and assist the small businesses that have been left behind. But at Vista Bank, we are continuing to process in the queue and be ready to provide those services to the small businesses, and most importantly, the real people that work for those small businesses as they enter these challenging times in our economy.
You are. So basically, and can you give us a sense of all the people who have come to ask for, to demand, have demand for a loan, in other words, what percentage of those do you think are approved and filled? Are we 25%, 50%, 75% of the way there? Because that's going to have implications for how much more money is needed.
Well, there's a question as to whether or not those that have been approved or in the queue are going to be funded. We have been working, as you stated, around the clock. First funding was at 3:30. There were other community banks funding immediately at 12:01. But I think as it pertains to the appropriations and when those funds are going to be available, we've been funding at a pretty rapid pace. There's been a lot of gloom with respect to the SBA and the regulatory bodies, but I'll tell you personally, we have seen not only community banks across the country work together, but we've also had the opportunity to see all the interagencies, the Treasury, the administration work diligently to essentially get as many of these businesses funded as possible and provide us the greatest chance to keep the hardworking, hard-trained employees that I remind you are real people. These are not numbers on a balance sheet. These are numbers not rolling across the bottom of your screen. Mm-hmm. These are people that are not currently in the unemployment line. So I would strongly encourage Congress to step up and not play partisan politics and get involved in what is ultimately going to either be a continued plan of success or one that expands unemployment going forward.
Exactly. And so, in a word, has everybody who showed up and asked for a loan been able to get one at this point?
There have been some that, quite frankly, weren't prepared, and so they were not able to participate in the program. One of the challenges that I would share with your viewers is, some of those businesses have been deemed essential, such as banks, and so we have, they're less prepared, those small businesses, and haven't had CFOs, CPA, accounting firms preparing many of the documents that were available for to apply for the program. And so that's one of the reasons I'm hopeful that, again, the program is funded because I do believe it's working. I mean, look, we can focus on the things that are not working, but these are real people trying their very best to make things work. And at Vista Bank, our board of directors and our stakeholders deemed it to be extremely necessary to help the communities we serve, regardless of whether or not they are clients currently.
Yeah, no, that's actually one of the last things I wanted to ask you, which is, and you've really emphasized this point, do you think there's a difference between the way community banks are able to handle and disperse this money relative to the major banks? Because it sounds like you think there is a difference, and I'm curious what that is.
Well, Kelly, I think 5 years ago, we sat around the boardroom and wrestled with whether or not there was even really a place for community banks. With all the attention that fintech companies and big banks oftentimes receive with technology that rivals the Pentagon and global call centers, and I think what we've seen through this process is when called upon, small businesses that act more like startups, we call them community banks, are willing to step up and help Main Street, hopefully in turn help Wall Street. But this has been an incredible process to watch everyone work together. It's very unfortunate, as you know, it doesn't discriminate. And I am very optimistic about where this program and our economy in the future is going.
One interesting sort of caveat, John, I believe, is that a lot of banks now have to hold, is it 5% of the loans that they're extending in order? I think the idea is to have some skin in the game to kind of make sure you're not just throwing money around willy-nilly, but that you're, kind of a partner in making some of these decisions. Are you concerned about being left holding the bag if this money is not repaid, if the economy or the virus worsens and people have to close up shop and can't make you whole on these loans?
Sure, I think that's a very fair question. It's two-pronged. One, the Fed did roll out a Paycheck Protection funding facility that allows banks to access funding sources to allow us to continue to provide liquidity to these small business owners that range, by the way, at Vista Bank. We've made loans from $1,400 to $7.5 million. And, you know, those range from 2 employees to 348 employees. And so I think it's something that obviously community bankers, our associations work diligently on, but the Treasury and the Fed and all the governmental agencies, the Banking Department of Texas, have ensured really that we are held harmless as long as we practice sound and safe banking practices. So it's not something we're real concerned about at this point. We're more concerned about getting money to these small business owners that are risking capital on a daily basis to ensure their employees and their companies remain solvent in the future.
Yep. Well, like you said, John, one of the biggest challenges your bank has faced in over 100 years. So that certainly gives us some perspective. Thanks for your work, and then thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you, ma'am, for the opportunity to join you today.